Let's start with some of the initiatives that you hope to see within the next 2 days. What needs to be done?
I think that we need to accelerate the transition towards a low-carbon economy. And we have the view that finance has a key role to play to reach that goal. So we will take some initiatives today under the leadership of Emmanuel Macron to help finance to funding more initiatives as far as the fight against climate change is concerned. We will put more transparency because we think that we have to explain to the people that some activities are not the right ones and that these activities have to change. For instance, coal-fired plants have to close down, and we all know that, but we have to be more transparent. We also want to put new financial tools on the table that will help us financing the transition towards a low-carbon economy. For instance, the green bonds. We have been the first state, France, to put on the table the green bonds. And the green bonds proved to be very efficient. So we have to move on that way, and we think that's really a very efficient answer to this challenge of climate change. And the third initiative that we will take is that public investors will commit themselves to provide more financing for the fight against climate change. These are the three initiatives that we will present today during that Climate Finance Day.
Minister, what is the question that you get the most by private investors? Do they ask you about the transparency and the need maybe for this to be mandated, or is it something else?
Well, I think transparency is really a key because people have to be aware that, once again, some activities do not help us to meet that commitment of reducing the level of CO2 in the world. And we have to be more transparent. We have to explain also that some activities are not relevant anymore. I just quoted the question of coal-fired plants. I think that's the best example that we can put on the table. They need more transparency and they need also new tools. That's why the green bonds, for me, are a very relevant tool that we have to maybe to use a little bit more.
But, Minister, for example, President Macron is calling for a carbon price floor, right?
Yes.
And it's unclear whether this will be adopted, for example, by Germany. So will France go at it alone?
We are doing our best to convince our partners, and especially Germany, that the prices of CO2 have to rise. When you are looking at the level of the prices of CO2 today, they are between 5 and 10 euros a ton. We think that we should reach 30 euros a ton for the CO2 so that it will nudge businesses and the finance to improving their proposals and to improving their answers to the fight against climate change. But we really think that the right price for the carbon, for the CO2, is not between 5 and 10 euros a ton, but around 30 euros a ton.
Minister, when it comes to, for example, electric vehicles, but also energy storage, Europe is falling a little bit behind compared to a lot of the Asian countries. What more can be done? What incentives can be taken in Europe?
Innovation is the key. Innovation is the key. And that's why the question of the price is one answer to that challenge of the fight against climate change. But the second answer is to provide more financing for innovation. If we want to keep on the race of innovation, we have to put more financing on innovation, and especially on disruptive innovation. We were talking about the question of batteries. This is a key. But what do we want? Do we want the US or China to take the lead on that? Or do we want to provide more financing for disruptive innovation like the batteries? That's why we have decided with President Macron to create a new fund, which will be a public fund of around 10 billion euros, which will help us financing disruptive innovation. And we hope that this new fund will be the starter for a fund at the European level with of course, more than 10 billion euros that will finance disruptive innovation to fight against the climate change and to help us to go the way of a low-carbon economy.
President Macron also has very ambitious plans for Europe, a common Eurozone budget, more integration. What does it mean in terms of timeline? Does it need to be done in 2018 because 2019 we may miss the boat?
We won't do anything in less than 2, 3 or 4 or 5 years. It will take time. But I think that the key point is the goal, the political goal. What do we want for the Eurozone? Do we want the Eurozone to remain only a monetary union, or do we want the Eurozone to become really an economic continent as strong, as powerful as China or the United States? That's exactly the political goal of Emmanuel Macron. We are also the view that we have to go step by step. We have, for the first step, I think that we should try to reach the banking union, to reach also the capital market union, and to try to improve the convergence as far as the corporate tax is concerned. And I'm the view that it would be possible between France and Germany to have a convergence as far as the corporate tax is concerned by 2018, by the end of 2018. The second step should be the improvement of the European Monetary Fund. We could try to have a European Monetary Fund which would help us to resist to economic crisis. And the last step should be the creation of a European budget with a finance minister, but we think that it should be really the last step. But this is the 3 steps approach that I have presented and that President Macron wants to explain to his partners before the end of 2017.
Is there a danger that by focusing too much on Europe, you're too distracted as an administration to deal with reforms in France?
No. You can rely on our full determination to improve the reforms that are needed for France. And I think that this is a kind of 2-track approach. On the one side, we have to accelerate the reforms in France to improve the competitiveness of the French economy, to reduce the public expenses and to create more jobs for French people. And the second track is more integration within the Eurozone for the sake of more growth and more employment for European people.
And you're confident that your European partners welcome and would second more integration?
I think that everybody is now aware that the statu quo cannot be the right answer to the current situation in Europe. The statu quo can no longer be the answer to the economic crisis, to the difficulties of the people. We have to move forward. We have to improve the functioning of the Eurozone. We have to put more solidarity among the members of the Eurozone. And we have to show to the people that the Eurozone is able to create more growth and more jobs. Otherwise, we run the risk of having always the same question coming from the people. Europe, what for? What is the benefits for me as a European citizen? More integration for the Eurozone should mean more jobs for the people and more growth for Europe.
Minister, do you think this has also been triggered because of Brexit, so that Brexit actually represents an opportunity for the rest of Europe?
I think that the Brexit had really a very important effect on the European people, and also on the European governments. For the first time, they realized that maybe Europe could one day disappear, and that Europe might be jeopardized by populist people, populist parties, and that we need a very concrete answer. We can no longer explain that Europe can stay as it is. We need an improvement of Europe for the sake of a better situation for everybody in Europe. So I really think that the Brexit has had a very strong effect on the awareness of the people and the governments.
Minister, are you confident that after the initial breakthrough deal that the UK had with the EU on Friday, we will get a deal that is good for both parties?
I hope so. I hope so. I've always explained that I'm not in favor of a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit. I'm in favor of a fair Brexit. And I think that it is in the interest of everybody, of the UK, of course, but also of all European people and all European states, to find a balanced agreement between the UK and Europe. Now we are on the right track. Michel Barnier made really a very good job and is making a very good job. We found a first solution, and I hope that we will keep on that right track.
Minister, one final question. What is your top priority for the French economic reform in 2018?
My top priority will always remain jobs, jobs, and jobs. Everything that we are doing now, or that we have done, for instance, the overhaul of the French tax system, the reduction of the level of taxes on capital, the improvement of the financing of companies, private companies. The single goal is to help our companies, our private companies, to create more jobs for French people. I will present a new law by the middle of 2018 with exactly the same goal, to improve the competitiveness of French companies, French private companies, to create more jobs for people.